What's up, guys? Welcome to another video. Today, as you can see, we are not on the KLX. We actually had a subscriber reach out to me, asked if I wanted to test ride an FZ-09 since I'm interested in one, and I said of course I would. So thank you again to the subscriber who is letting me ride this right now. We're gonna go on a quick test ride and see how I like it. So yeah, this is my first ride on an FZ-09 and we're gonna see how we like it. So you can definitely tell that the throttle's a little twitchy, like people state, but I can tell it's easily something that you can get used to. Much more power than the KLX, that's for sure. Man, that triple sound as well. Sounds good. This is actually who I sold the FMF to right here, and as you can see, it's gonna put to good use. Oh man, the KLX definitely has a lot of torque, but there's nothing like just grabbing a fistful of throttle and being set back in your seat. Some of you guys may know, but I have had a ZX6RR before that was stunted out, and I rode that for a little bit. So hopping on this bike, you know, I wasn't too intimidated. And from what I've read, a lot of people say that, you know, the throttle's twitchy, which it is a little bit, but you can get used to it. I'm in 4th gear here at 5,000 RPM, and as you can see, it definitely pulls nicely. So ergonomics wise, coming from a dual sport type of riding position, the foot pegs are set back a little bit. You are sitting upright though, definitely not as far forward as say a Ninja. In terms of leg room, your knees are scrunched up a little bit more, but the seat, I'm not sure what seat he has on here. I know it's an aftermarket seat, I'll have to look it up, but the seat feels comfortable. Those downshifts sound so sweet. So back to the ergonomics, you're not as upright as a dual sport. There is a little bit more weight on your wrists, but like I said, it's still a comfortable bike. You could definitely do some miles with this. Now let's go ahead and move on to the power. which I'm sure you guys want to hear my opinion about that, considering that I have the KLX, and you guys know it did have a full exhaust, waiting on the new one to come in, and of course the big bore kit, EJK, KDX snorkel. But I mean, what can I say? It's an FZ-09, it's a triple. It's as you would expect. It feels pretty similar to my ZX6RR. It does, the power comes on a lot harder though, down low, considering it's not an inline 4. I don't know, the FZ-09, it definitely seems to be holding its place at the top of my list for the next build. Of course, power, if I had to give it a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, you know, it's not the fastest bike, obviously, and the fastest bike I've ridden is a ZX6RR, the one I had. So since I haven't ridden a faster bike, I'll give it an 8 out of 10, but coming from a dual sport guy like me, it definitely is a lot more powerful. So an important trait that I should talk about is the suspension. A lot of people say that the FZ-09 does have soft suspension, and the roads aren't too bumpy here. We did just hit a bump back there, and it did feel a little floaty, but for what I plan on doing with the bike, like I said, I kind of want to create a supermoto scrambler type of build with the FZ-09. So there's a dog bone length that can raise the rear, there's fork extensions that can raise the front to help with ground clearance for that drain bolt that is pretty low to the ground. And then they make skid plate, crash cage, and then I do probably some subframe work to get the look I'm going for. And then I do some body work, like I said, to kind of give it that supermoto look. And the reason I like the FZ-09 compared to the 7, like I said before, is because the subframe is already kind of flattened out like a supermoto. See, as you can see there, standing up a little bit, moving your hand around, the throttle is a little twitchy. It's not like it's throwing me off the bike like people made it out to be. Back to the suspension, of course we're not pushing it through these roads, we have traffic, and of course this isn't my bike, but I mean, it honestly doesn't feel bad. I mean, it feels like I'm riding my KLX going over the bumps. It's not like you're bottoming out the suspension every time you go over a bump either. Just allow them to get some space right here. Into that bump right there, into that corner, you did feel some of that energy being transferred into your body sitting on the bike here. Thank goodness I wore my street helmet today. A little side note here on the KLX, as you can see, I am following a KLX, and in the twisties the KLX is doing fine. Just a little side note there for the bike I currently have, but of course with a big bore, not a stock bore. So yeah, some of the bumps on the road, you definitely can feel them, but I think that would be easily fixed with a little bit of a stiffer spring for the shock, and then the fork cartridges, rebuild the forks. But, you know, coming from the KLX, it doesn't have the best suspension, so again, it's something that I guess I'm kind of used to. And what I mean by that in terms of people saying that the KLX or the FZ doesn't have the best suspension, well, if you want better suspension, I guess that's something that you gotta fix. So I didn't really pay much attention to this either, but when I got on it a little bit back there, the wind, you know, of course you feel it. You're on an upright bike. Right now we're going 50 miles an hour, and it's not a super windy day, so that helps, but I don't feel like I'm being pushed back at all by the wind either. And again, since I ride a KLX, I'm kind of used to that with a dual sport helmet, no wind protection. Oh man, you just can't get enough of that sweet sounding triple. The FZ-07, it sounds like a beast of a bike, and we're talking about sound here. That twin sounds really good, does sound pretty muscly, but the FZ-09 sounds really clean. And I don't know, I like both sounds. You guys see in my car, it's real loud, and I think it sounds pretty clean, but it definitely is loud, and when you open it up, it's just roaring through the tunnels and whatnot. So, of course, sound is a preferential thing. I don't know, so far I'm liking the bike. It definitely holding its place at the top of my list for the next build. I think it would be pretty sweet. Another thing about the power, a lot of people say that this bike wants to wheelie, and of course I'm still on my KLX in the learning process. I can get the wheel up, but can't really ride it out. But I guess I'm talking to those people who are scared to get on the FZ-09. If you roll into the throttle and you're smart with your throttle inputs, feeling out the bike, maybe if you want to stay in a higher gear than you should, if you ease into the throttle, the front end of course will get light. That's what happens when you get on the throttle, but you know, I haven't felt it want to pick up on me. Of course I haven't gunned it in second or first gear, which I am not going to do, but I guess you can kind of put a foot down here, stick your leg out like a dual sport, get that supermoto feeling. I've ridden one supermoto, and since that's what I plan on doing with this bike, it definitely kind of feels like a supermoto. You can put a leg out if you want to. So with that dog bone link raised up in the rear and the fork extensions raised up in the front, you'd be kind of riding at the height of a supermoto as well, so you get that feeling. We got to talk about flickability as well. So of course, on a dual sport, that was one of the big things that I talked about in my KLX review, is the ability to flick it around, back it into corners. And the fact that it's real agile is a great feature to have, because in the city, if you want to have some fun, that's one of the biggest things that you want. If you want to hop curbs, rip around in some fields, all that stuff that I like to do. So with FZ, getting on it, it doesn't feel real heavy. Of course, when you get on a bike, some bikes do feel top heavy, but the FZ-09 doesn't feel like that. Flickability, of course, upright, has dedicated street tires on the bike compared to the KLX. So as you can see, I need to make some modifications to the FZ to be able to do stuff like that, because that's what I enjoy doing, hopping off the road, see a mud puddle, hopping over curbs. So that's what I would want to do with the FZ, make it a little bit, I guess, make it easier to do that stuff. Standing up on the bike, your butt definitely sticks out a little bit. The exhaust, I'm not sure, again, what exhaust is on here. I'll put it up on the screen. When you stand up, your heel hits it. But with some modification, you could make this bike easier to stand up on. Oh yes, once in a roundabout, you gotta go around it more than once. Alright, so on the other side of this bridge, we're gonna go ahead and put it in 6, see how much roll-on power we got at 6. Oh, I guess we're going a different way. Alright, now we'll get into 6. So 55. Oh yeah, has some good power. More power than the KLX, but for those who want to use this on the highway, good passing power in 6th gear. The wind at 65 now, I can give you guys a better idea. It feels about the same as the KLX. I have less wind on my helmet, it feels like. Could be because of my street helmet. And I do feel some wind on my chest / stomach area. Ooh, a little bumpy over those. Drop back and get a little bit more speed here. Alright, so the last thing we can talk about is how it feels to ride. How confidence inspiring is it? So of course, with it having a little bit more street-oriented tires, it does feel really planted when you get on the throttle. The bike is really comfortable compared to the KLX, and the KLX I've gotten mine to where I can be pretty comfortable for, you know, a couple hours of riding. So the FZ-09 is just, the seat is wider, you're upright, the wind protection's a little bit better than the KLX, but in terms of confidence, yeah, the throttle twitchiness takes away from that a little bit. The suspension gets kind of floaty over some bumps. But if you're right in the head and, you know, you're not going full throttle everywhere you go, and you can control yourself with how you get on the throttle, what gear you're in, you know, it feels like the KLX, any other bike. Oh yeah, it's fun. So another thing I like about this bike, since we're talking about how it feels to ride, is that you don't have to be getting on it every time you ride the bike to have fun. It has enough torque. You can roll into the throttle a little bit to get moving. Oh man, it's just a sweet sounding bike, fun to ride. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, just like with the KLX. So yeah, I think the FZ-09 has held the top spot on my list pretty well today. Alright guys, well, that is going to conclude my first ride on the FZ-09 here. I hope you guys enjoyed my first ride / kind of a review. Of course, if I end up going with this bike, I will make a more in-depth review under my ownership. But I hope you found it useful. But as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Also, share it to your friends and those who may enjoy it. And of course, if you are not subscribed already, go down there, hit the subscribe button, get the bell on. We are getting close to 1,000, and once we get there, we're gonna have a special announcement for the KLX that's gonna be pretty exciting. But with all that being said, join the club, and I'll see you in the next one. I think we just caught air right there. Wow. Oh my goodness. Alright, well, I think that is probably a good clip to end on.
I'm the motherfucking greatest. Yeah, I'm the greatest. Bitch, my competition is no